Welcome again to Monkeynomics 101. Before I get into today's lesson, I want to address a concern I heard voiced in response to my last video. Many people were very skeptical of my assertion that a 10% average return was reasonable. So let me address that by pointing you towards something called the index chart, which I'll provide a link to. This chart is developed by Morningstar, which I love, but they charge money to have online access to their tools and graphs. So it's impossible for me to link everyone to a current chart, but luckily I found this chart for free online, so enjoy. Now this chart only goes until 2011, so it's not current, but the US economy hadn't recovered from the 2008 collapse until 2012, so the more recent data is even more positive and higher than 11%. However, this chart will serve my needs. I'll make a video later to explain the ins and outs of the index chart, but for now I just want to focus on the table in the lower right hand corner, which shows the percentage returns. If you look at the 30-year averages, 6 out of the 11 indexes returned more than a 10% average annual return, including 100% of US stock indexes. If you were investing internationally, including Canada, the returns were only about 9% on average, but that's still really good. And while the US may have been the leader over the last 30 years, the emerging markets will probably balance the global markets going forward. Anyway, the point is just by investing on the indexes, you made a 10% average annual return with no intelligent input or risk management. Now, I'm not a fan of index investing, and I'll explain why later, but this proves that even index investing provides a 10% average return, so it's very reasonable to expect such a return if you can outperform the index. One person in the comments section said that if there was a way to make 10% a year, pension programs would be using it, but that's not true because pensions are collective. People are always retiring or in retirement, while younger employees are saving and contributing to the pension program. So there's no window for the pension to aggressively invest and ride out the ups and downs of the market. They are forced to be as conservative as possible because the pension must provide for current retirees every year. This is why these pension programs can't expect a 10% return, and why they inevitably go bankrupt. An individual can invest on their own for 30 years, and ride the ups and downs of the market because they're still decades from retirement. Once they approach retirement age, they simply move the money out of aggressive stocks and into safer investments, but only after at least 30 years, wherein they average 10% a year, even if they just invested on the index, which I've already said I don't advocate, and will show you how to do better later. Anyway, I hope that clears things up, and now let's move on to the lesson. Today's lesson is going to be about managing debt. Debt is the main reason why most people don't achieve their financial goals. It's really a sign of immaturity. People who can't delay gratification and have to have it now go into debt. Those who are mature and know how to delay gratification find a way to save for what they want and pay cash. So, as before, I'll use national averages for my statistics. These statistics are based on the average American, so if you're not American, these numbers may be slightly different. All links to the statistics will be in the description. The average American has the following debt balances, with the following annual percentage rates, and thus pays the following dollar amount in interest each year. Student loans. Average balance of $32,264, annual percentage rate 5%, annual interest $1,613.12 a year. Credit card debt. Average balance $15,611, annual percentage rate 14.9%, annual interest of $2,326.04 a year. Auto loan debt. Average balance of $27,000, annual percentage rate 4.31%, annual interest of $1,163.70. Mortgage debt. Average balance of $155,192. Annual percentage rate of 3.8%. Annual interest of $5,897.30. Total $11,000.16 per year in interest payments alone, not including any principal payments. Meanwhile, the average American has a 401k balance of $101,650. If this 401k enjoyed a 10% increase, that increase would equal $10,165. Meanwhile, that same person is paying over $11,000 in interest that same year to their student loans, credit cards, auto loans, and mortgage loans, meaning that their net worth has decreased by $835.16. Let me repeat that. In a scenario wherein the average person's retirement grew by 10%, their net worth went down by nearly $1,000 because of their debt. This is why people never become rich. They dig their own hole and send all their money to creditors. Their income comes in and their bills go out, and only the names change to protect the innocent. Not paying $11,000 to creditors will have the exact same effect on a person's wealth as earning $11,000 in interest from an investment, meaning that by becoming debt-free, a person could mirror the effects of earning 11% on a $100,000 investment. Now, not all debt is bad, but it has to pay off. A mortgage can be a good and necessary debt, because it would take too long to save the hundreds of thousands of dollars needed to buy a house, and with the appreciating value of real estate, it may be a good investment. Student loans may also be a good investment, assuming that it leads directly to a high-paying career that you could not have gotten without the education. However, that's the exception rather than the rule. I'll cover college and careers in the next video, but for now, just understand that student loans are almost never worth it. Always try to find a way to get someone else to pay for your college, such as scholarships, grants, employer benefits, or the military GI Bill. If you're going to go into debt for college, it had better be for a damn good reason, and not just because you want the quote-unquote college experience. A car can also be a good investment, because reliable transportation allows you to travel to get a job outside of walking distance, which again may be worth the debt and expense. However, a small used car can be had for around $10,000 paid in full. Spending nearly $30,000 on a car, as the average American does, is stupid. Credit cards are never an investment. They are a sign that you don't have an emergency savings account. You should have between 6 and 12 months of living expenses saved for an emergency, and not resort to using credit cards to supplement a paycheck-to-paycheck lifestyle. The funny thing about debt is that if you just make the payments, they eventually pay themselves off. Getting out of debt is as simple as not getting into any more debt. But if you want to speed the process up, I'll share a method that will help you. What I'm going to share is heavily influenced by Dave Ramsey, who is a financial author, radio host, television personality, and motivational speaker. He's written several books and has a radio show that specializes in helping broke people with too much debt. Now, once you've moved past that phase and you're ready to do some serious investing, he's not the best source for advice. But if you're just getting started or you have debt problems, he's the man I recommend listening to. I'll provide a link to his website in the description. Okay, step 1 is to get together $1,000. This is important because while you're paying off your debt, something could happen, like you might need car repairs or something like that. You don't want to have to take out another loan or use credit cards and dig yourself a deeper hole. So the first step is to create a small emergency fund before you really start chipping away at your debt. Step 2 is to attack your debt one bill at a time using what Dave calls the debt snowball method. There are 2 ways to set up the debt snowball. The first is to arrange your debts from smallest to largest, and the second is to set them up from highest interest rate to lowest interest rate. Dave recommends smallest to largest so that you can arrange some early wins for yourself and get an emotional high at the beginning to keep you motivated. Now, Dave also speaks to a lot of women, and I believe that such advice is directed at them because women are inherently emotional and not logical. The logical approach is to pay off the debts with the highest interest rate first because it will save you more money in interest payments. That may mean tackling larger debts before smaller debts, and robbing yourself of the emotional pat on the back. But we aren't blubbering women, we're MGTOW, and doing what's smart instead of what feels good should be second nature to us. If you have significant assets, either in cash or in non-retirement investments, and you also have significant debts, it's better to use those assets to pay off your debts. Don't cash out your retirement assets because you'll be hit with taxes and penalties. But if they aren't associated with a retirement account, use that money to pay off your debts, and keep $1,000 as an emergency fund. It may emotionally hurt to quote-unquote lose that money, but you're actually improving your net worth by eliminating debts and avoiding interest, instead of leaving the money in a bank earning little to no interest simply to serve as a security blanket. Okay, so how does the debt snowball work? It's simple. You keep paying the minimum payments on all your debts, but you attack the first debt item on the list and pay it off as soon as possible. Once that debt is paid off, you move on to the next item, and apply the money that you were using to pay the first debt towards the second debt. When the second debt is paid off, you take the freed up money from the first and second debts and pay off the third debt, and so on and so forth until all your debts are paid off. As you get further down the list, the amount of freed up money you have will keep growing, and then once you're debt free, your income will be free to be put to work for you. This process may take a few years if you dug yourself into a significantly deep hole, but don't get discouraged. When a fat person decides to lose weight, it takes time and discipline to get in shape, and financial fitness is no different. It's going to take time, but hang in there and keep at it and you'll be free soon enough. What if you're in so much debt that you can't even maintain the minimum payments? Maybe you're already behind on some bills because they're just too much month at the end of the money. Or maybe you've been made a wage slave by your ex-wife in the family courts, and you see no way out. Well, to use the fitness metaphor again, While someone who's overweight may be able to turn their life around with diet, exercise, and self-control, other times the person is in a dire situation and surgery is required. The first option may be to work overtime or get a second job until you can get out from underneath your debt. You may have to work 60-hour weeks, or a 40-hour full-time and a 20-hour part-time job, but the additional income may be enough to help you break out from the downward debt spiral and get control of your finances. These don't have to be glamorous jobs, just anything that could bring in extra income. With the rising minimum wage, formal jobs may be harder to come by, so you may have to be creative and create your own opportunities. I'll get more into that in my next video about careers. In extreme cases where you can't find any additional work, or you can't work for whatever reason, the last situation is to consider bankruptcy. Now, many people don't know this, but there are different kinds of bankruptcy. Chapter 7 bankruptcy is the kind most people think of. It's when you're broke as hell, and you go to the judge with your pockets turned inside out, and the judge liquidates all but your bare essentials in order to pay your creditors something, and then forgives the rest. This is an extreme solution, but even this won't eliminate student loans or other government debt, or affect child support and alimony payments or debt. If your bankruptcy is being caused by child support and alimony, and there's no way out from under it, you may just want to disappear and start a whole new life somewhere else. I'm linking to a Terrence Pop video called Deadbeat Dad Dilemma that illustrates the problem perfectly. And honestly, because even bankruptcy won't get you out from alimony and child support, going ghost or going to jail may be your only viable options. We need some kind of MGTOW underground railroad for divorced men or something. Anyway, that's a topic for another day. The second kind of bankruptcy is called Chapter 11, which is more for businesses and allows them to renegotiate things like union contracts that are driving the company towards Chapter 7 bankruptcy. This kind of bankruptcy doesn't apply to us, but I just wanted to bring it up. The main kind of bankruptcy I want to focus on is known as Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Chapter 13 allows a court to intervene, stop the debts from accruing further interest, and sets up a repayment plan for your debts. It also renegotiates the balance of debts based on the current value rather than the value at the time of purchase. So let's say you bought a car worth $10,000, but now it's only worth $4,000. Chapter 13 can renegotiate the balance owed to the current value of the car. Chapter 13 can also help avoid having your home foreclosed on, and will allow you to keep your property as long as you stick to the repayment plan. The main differences are that Chapter 7 forgives most of your debt, but takes most of your shit along with it, and really fucks up your credit. Chapter 13 doesn't forgive your debts, but it does stop interest from accruing, and allows you to set up a payment plan that's realistic if you have no other options, and also lets you keep your stuff. Your credit will still be ruined by a Chapter 13, but not as much as a Chapter 7. It's much better to use the debt snowball and self-discipline in order to get control of your debts without declaring bankruptcy, but sometimes it's the only way to stop the bleeding. So we've covered a lot in this lesson, and if you'd like more information about anything I've touched on, let me know in the comments section. Your homework this week is to establish your emergency fund, and stop using debt to dig yourself into a deeper hole. If you have an emergency fund, you can borrow from yourself for free, instead of paying back a loan or paying off a credit card bill with interest. So thank you for watching, please like, favorite, comment, and subscribe. Share this video with anyone you think it might help, and I'll see you next time.